Today I'm going to build this birdhouse out of this pallet, and it's for the Summers Woodworking Creative Birdhouse Contest Challenge, something like that. Ask Steve Carmichael in this video, he seems to know what he's talking about. So I need a couple boards that are 17.5 inches, which puts me over here somewhere. So I'm going to run the circular saw down the side and try to pull these pallet boards off, because I need a couple long ones and the rest of them are short, so I should be able to cut the nail holes out. But again, the nail holes will add a little bit of character. So I'm going to rip this pallet apart, and then we're going to go down in the shop and build our birdhouse and hopefully win the track saw. Izzy, I'm sorry.
5 inches.
5 inches?
It sounds trying to do it over there.
Okay. Started out by running the circular saw down the edge of the pallet on either side of the 17-inch board that I'm after. Man, some of these pallets are hard to get apart, and this was one of them. I believe the pallet was oak, and a beautiful wood, no doubt about that, but it was definitely difficult to get it apart. Need to get myself a pallet pal or something similar. Pounded the nails through and pulled them out with a crowbar, making sure I picked them all up because this is out in the garage. Brought all my pieces down in the shop. Here I'm ripping one edge off, and then I flip that board over and rip it parallel against the fence. These boards are for the back of the birdhouse, and I'm gluing them up with Titebond 3 so that it's waterproof, because it's obviously going outside. Clamping up with a bunch of clamps. Rubbing some sawdust on just to get the glue off, so it's easier to sand later on. Now I'm planing the boards for the sides and the top of the birdhouse, and going through the same sequence of cutting one side and running the other side parallel to it. And we're going to glue these boards together, but we wanted them to be small, so we cut it down to 3/4 of an inch and glued it up just so we had some offsets to make it a very rough looking Bluebird house is what this is. We want it to look rough and like an outhouse. So glued up a bunch of these small boards just to make it look more like paneling that you'd actually have on a real outhouse. And we want it to stay very rustic, so I didn't make a hard attempt to make sure it was perfectly parallel and even. I want it to be very rough, and I rubbed some sawdust over this as well to get rid of the glue, as much as I could anyway. And here's a shot with the sides glued up. Never can have enough clamps, ever. Here I am screwing the back of the birdhouse down to a board that I know is cut parallel, and I'm running that side up against the fence and overhanging one side of the back of the birdhouse. It just acts as a jointer, and now I'm cutting the board to perfect width. And I did the same sequence with the sides, but I didn't show myself screwing them down every single time. You can see there how we left the slats of the birdhouse sides offset just to give it a more rustic look. And here I'm cutting the back of the bottom of the birdhouse, the floor, and cutting the sides to length, the bottom to length. Doing a little bit of sanding to get the sawdust and glue off. My wife wanted to try a rustic look on this, which we'll explain later. Here I'm putting the taper for the roof on, just 45 degrees, and cutting that on the miter saw. And this is the roof of the birdhouse. Same sequence, I followed the same sequence to glue up, cut parallel, and cut to width on the miter saw. I had to flip it over because it's not a sliding miter saw, 12 inch, but wasn't quite big enough. And there's the roof. Here I tried to do a fancy inlay, I guess you would call it, to go along the sides, but I failed epically. So there, I was just cutting that out. And originally I was going to have a free-floating floor, but I figured we needed more support since one of the sides is going to rotate. So here I am gluing those supports in for what was going to be the free-floating floor, but I ended up actually just nailing through this into the floor to hold it all in place, and that ended up working out pretty well. Making sure there's a lot of clamping pressure. What are you building, Serafina?
I'm bringing screws.
You're building screws?
Here, Bluebird house.
Bluebird house. Here I'm cutting some tape, some miters on the edge of the floor just to make sure there's lots of airflow and that water can drain. Now I'm gluing up some very small pieces of board to make the quote-unquote door of the outhouse. And clamping that all up. And drilling the 1.5 inch hole, which is the size you need for a bluebird species. And my wife is going through and making it scratched up and rustic looking. She had a good time doing this. She was really looking forward to it and did quite a bit of research, of course, on YouTube to make sure she knew what she was doing. And now she's actually using shoe polish to make it look rustic. Worn and weathered is what we want. And it worked out pretty well. And now on to gluing up the actual structure. Again, using some waterproof glue to glue one of the sides in place. This is the side that's going to be stationary, and the other side is going to open up and rotate out so that you can empty the birdhouse at the end of the year. And on the front of this, I am not going to be using any hardware, so it's all going to be glue and dowels on the front of the birdhouse. I cheated and used a couple brad nails on the back just to save me some time. Despite the cheating nails, it's still not a crappy job. So now I'm drilling some 1/4 inch holes for the 1/4 inch dowels to go into. And this side is going to be stationary, so it's just a 1/4 inch all the way through. Now this is the side that rotates, so I'm actually going to switch bits and make the hole a little bit bigger so I can take this dowel pin out. And then I take the door out and enlarge the hole that it's going to rotate through a little bit, just so I have some room. Now I'm using my dowel making jig to make myself a 1/4 inch dowel. And this actually works out shockingly well. I saw how to do this. Izzy Swan and John Hines both have an article or a video on how to make one of these, and I'll probably make one myself. But it worked out shockingly well, and you can make fine adjustments just with sandpaper, as you can see here. But using my set of calipers, I had 2.52 inches, which is definitely more accurate than you need to be worried about. Cutting to length with a hacksaw and a miter jig. And sanding down so I have a little bit of a tapered end to pound into the birdhouse. Again, using some glue, this is going to be the stationary side of the birdhouse. And I snapped this one off, but that's okay, it looks fine. And sawing them flush. And here I am putting the dowels into the rotating side. I put a little dab glue into the side, but that was all. And now using some brad nails to nail it down. And my wife is using some outdoor spar urethane to finish it. This is actually going to be a gift for my grandma, so it's a kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess. Is that pushing it too much? And here Seraphine and I are going outside to kind of promo our birdhouse. As you can see here, you take the dowel out and it opens up so you can clean the birdhouse out at the end of the year. The dowel pin pinches in there pretty well, so it's not going to be going anywhere. And this is Brian's Outback Outhouse, or some graffiti etched in the side that says Tyler was here. And of course, corn cobs are 10 cents, but leaves are free if you're pinched for a little bit of money. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Tyler. I like to do it myself. We will see you next time.